In the kit, there are 7 pieces of fabric. 1 fabric A, 4 fabric Bs, 1 fabric C, and a piece for your binding. Before starting, I'm going to grab my wool pressing mat, my mini OLISO iron, and best press, and I'm going to spray and press all of the fabrics before doing any cutting. Let them dry and cool completely before you move them. This is your fabric A. These 4 fabrics are your fabric B. So again, the beige poinsettia and the beige pine cones, white pine cones and the white poinsettia are your fabric Bs. And your fabric C is the pine needles. You will also have a piece of fabric in your kit, which would be this one here, the beige background with the poinsettias, that is labeled binding. So make sure you set that aside for now. We won't use that until the end. Now it's time to cut fabric A. I'm using a slightly different fabric. You will cut 2 4-inch by width of fabric strips and 3 4.5-inch by width of fabric strips. Subcut into 20 4 by 4-inch squares and 18 4.5 by 4.5-inch squares. Now it's time to cut your fabric Bs. You have 4 different prints for your fabric B. Refer to your pattern for your fabric B cuts. You will cut 1 4-inch by width of fabric strip and 1 4.5 by width of fabric strip. Repeat with all 4 B fabrics. Subcut your B fabrics according to your pattern. From each B fabric, you will get 4 4 by 4-inch squares and 8 4.5 by 4.5-inch squares. So from your B fabrics, you will have a total of 16 4 by 4-inch squares and 32 4.5 by 4.5-inch squares. And now we will cut our fabric C. Refer to your pattern. First we'll cut 2 strips, 4.5 inches by width of fabric. Subcut your strips into 4.5-inch squares. You will have 14 4.5 by 4.5-inch squares of fabric C. After I finished cutting, I am just going to organize my squares just on some leftover cardboard here, just so that when we get to the sewing part, I don't get my squares confused. Because even though this is pretty simple setup, I am still liable to mix up my blocks. So that's what I do, just to keep my fabrics organized. And that's it for this week. We will see you guys next week when we get to sewing. Thanks so much.